The British monarchy has survived wars, divorces, and tragedy, but this time feels different. When Prince Andrew was exposed through the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, it wasn't just one man who fell. The damage climbed upward, toward the crown, toward King Charles III himself. Silence followed, protection followed, and now shame follows. The question is no longer what Andrew did, but why the monarchy allowed the shadow to grow this long, and whether this stain can ever be erased. The Epstein connection that changed everything. The scandal did not explode in a single moment. It grew quietly over years, protected by wealth, influence, and fear. The name Jeffrey Epstein was whispered among elites long before the public truly understood who he was. Born in 1953, Epstein built access, not respectability. His power came from proximity to billionaires, politicians, and eventually royalty. By the early 2000s, his world overlapped with the British royal family in ways that would later become impossible to defend. In 2001, a photograph was taken that would later haunt the monarchy. It showed Prince Andrew, then 41 years old, standing casually beside Epstein and Virginia Giuffre, who was 17 at the time. At first, the image drew little attention. It was filed away, unnoticed, while Epstein continued hosting powerful guests in New York, Florida, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. The danger was not just what happened, but how long no one asked questions. Everything should have ended in 2008. That year, Epstein pleaded guilty in Florida to soliciting a minor and served 13 months in jail. For most people, that conviction would have ended all respectable connections. For Andrew, it did not. This decision, continuing any association after 2008, became the moral fault line of the entire scandal. It turned poor judgment into something far darker. The public would later ask one question again and again: why stay close to a convicted sex offender? When Epstein was arrested again in July 2019 on federal sex trafficking charges, the story detonated globally. Survivors came forward. Documents resurfaced. Old photographs were dragged into the light. Andrew's name reappeared in headlines across 2019 and 2020, no longer as rumor, but as a central figure. The palace issued cautious statements, but caution felt hollow. Silence did not calm the storm. It fed it. Epstein's death on August 10, 2019, at age 66, did not close the case. It opened it wider. With Epstein gone, attention shifted to those who had moved freely in his orbit. Andrew stood out, not because he was accused in court at that moment, but because of who he was. A prince, a representative of the crown, a symbol of power without consequence. What began as one man's crimes became a test of the monarchy's values. By the end of 2019, the damage was irreversible. The Epstein connection was no longer deniable, dismissible, or containable. It was etched into public memory. And the longer it lingered, the more it raised another uncomfortable truth. This scandal was never just about Andrew. It was about what surrounded him, and who chose not to act. As the Epstein connection hardened into fact, attention shifted from photographs to behavior. Not what Andrew was accused of, but what he chose to do after everyone else walked away. Prince Andrew's friendship that raised red flags. After 2008, every decision Prince Andrew made involving Epstein mattered more. Epstein was no longer a mystery. He was a convicted offender. Yet in December 2010, Andrew was photographed walking through Central Park, New York, after staying at Epstein's mansion. He was 50 years old, serving as a UK trade envoy, and fully aware of Epstein's past. This was not ignorance. It was defiance. Andrew later claimed he visited Epstein to end the friendship. That explanation collapsed instantly. Ending a friendship does not require staying overnight or appearing relaxed in public. The image of Andrew strolling through Manhattan became symbolic, not of innocence, but of entitlement. It told the public that consequences did not apply equally, and that message was devastating. By 2014 and 2015, allegations intensified. Virginia Giuffre, then in her early 30s, stated she was trafficked to Andrew on 3 occasions, in London, New York, and the Virgin Islands. She provided dates, locations, and details. Andrew denied ever meeting her, despite the 2001 photograph. That denial would later become one of the most damaging statements of his life. The palace response during 2015 to 2018 followed an old formula: distance, delay, and legal caution. There were no public expressions of concern for victims, no visible cooperation with U.S. authorities. Each year of silence hardened public suspicion. By the time Epstein was arrested again in 2019, Andrew's credibility was already collapsing. What made Andrew's situation worse was attitude. Observers noted a lack of humility, a lack of empathy, and an expectation of protection. The scandal was no longer about proving guilt or innocence. It was about judgment. And judgment had already been rendered in the court of public opinion. By late 2019, Andrew was isolated. Allies disappeared. Public sympathy evaporated. The question was no longer whether the friendship looked bad. It was how the monarchy allowed it to continue for so long. And that question was about to explode on live television. Under mounting pressure and global criticism, Andrew made a choice that stunned even palace insiders. He agreed to speak publicly, believing he could explain everything himself. The interview that destroyed a royal. On November 16, 2019, Prince Andrew sat down with the BBC for what was meant to be a recovery moment. The interview lasted 58 minutes. Within hours, it became one of the most infamous royal appearances in modern history. Instead of repairing his image, Andrew dismantled it sentence by sentence. Andrew denied knowing Virginia Giuffre, denied sexual contact, and denied wrongdoing. He claimed he could not sweat due to a medical condition from the 1982 Falklands War. That explanation was instantly ridiculed. Medical professionals questioned it. Journalists dismantled it. The public rejected it. The interview revealed not confusion, but detachment. What shocked viewers most was tone. Andrew showed no visible concern for victims, no regret for association, no understanding of why the situation looked wrong. He spoke like a man insulated from consequence. Within 24 hours, backlash dominated headlines in Britain, America, and Europe. Social media replayed clips endlessly. By November 20, 2019, Andrew stepped back from public duties. But the damage was already permanent. The interview did not just expose Andrew, it exposed the monarchy's blind spot. A system that allowed a senior royal to speak so poorly, so confidently, without restraint. In January 2022, Andrew was stripped of military titles and patronages. Yet the interview remained the defining moment. It crystallized everything the public feared: arrogance, privilege, and protection. Trust collapsed. Sympathy vanished. The BBC interview became a historical marker. Before it, the monarchy could still argue confusion. After it, The problem was undeniable. And quietly, attention began shifting upward toward the future of the crown itself. King Charles inherits a poisoned crown. When King Charles III became king in September 2022, he inherited more than a crown. He inherited silence, secrets, and a scandal already burning for over 20 years. Prince Andrew's Epstein ties were unresolved, unfinished, and still fresh in public memory. Charles was 73 years old, newly crowned, and immediately under pressure to prove he was different from the past. But the Andrew problem followed him straight into the throne room. Public anger focused on one belief: protection. Even after Andrew lost titles in January 2022, he remained at Royal Lodge, a 30-room mansion with private security. Reports suggested ongoing financial support, though denied officially. To ordinary people facing inflation in 2022 and economic strain in 2023, this looked like privilege shielding disgrace. Charles said little, and every month of silence looked like approval. Inside the palace, advisors feared escalation. Any public condemnation of Andrew risked family rupture. Any defense risked national backlash. Charles chose caution, but history shows caution can look like weakness. By 2023, polls showed declining trust in the monarchy among younger citizens aged 18 to 34. Commentators openly asked why Andrew had not been forced into full exile. The question grew louder. Was Charles protecting the crown, or his brother? What made this moment dangerous was timing. Charles wanted to modernize the monarchy, slim it down, restore respect. Yet Andrew's continued presence undermined every reform speech. Each appearance of Andrew, whether at Easter 2023 or private events, reignited anger. The Epstein stain did not fade with time. It spread, and slowly, shame began attaching itself not just to Andrew, but to the king himself. As Charles struggled to contain the damage, the public began looking backward. They remembered another royal crisis, another moment when the palace chose silence over humanity, and one woman whose story still haunts the institution decades later. The ghost of Diana returns. The name Diana still carries power, even 27 years after her death in 1997. When Prince Andrew's scandal unfolded, many saw familiar patterns. Back then, Diana spoke openly in 1995 about isolation, neglect, and emotional cruelty. The palace denied, delayed, and distanced, just as it did during the Epstein fallout. History felt uncomfortably close. After Diana's August 31, 1997 death in Paris, public grief turned into fury. The monarchy survived only because it adapted, temporarily. Queen Elizabeth eventually bowed to public pressure. But lessons fade. By 2019, critics said the palace had reverted to old habits: protect the institution, minimize damage, ignore public emotion. Andrew's case felt like proof that Diana's warnings were never truly absorbed. The comparison deepened as victims spoke. Diana had always aligned herself with the vulnerable, the sick, the unheard, the dismissed. Andrew's Epstein links represented the opposite: power without consequence. Survivors like Virginia Giuffre were questioned, doubted, and attacked online. To many, this mirrored how Diana was once undermined behind palace walls. Sympathy shifted away from royalty and toward those outside it. By 2024, Diana's legacy had become a moral measuring stick. Commentators asked, what would Diana have said? Would she have stayed silent? The answer felt obvious, and that contrast made the monarchy's response look colder, slower, and more disconnected than ever. The past wasn't buried. It was speaking loudly. With history resurfacing and pressure rising, the spotlight shifted forward to the future. One royal figure wasn't speaking at all, but his silence told a different story, and the public noticed immediately. William's quiet contrast. Prince William never gave an interview about Andrew. He never defended him. He never explained. Instead, he distanced himself, quietly, consistently, and publicly. From 2020 onward, William avoided joint appearances, avoided statements, and avoided association. At 41 years old in 2023, the future king was sending a message without words. Royal sources revealed William's frustration behind closed doors. He reportedly believed Andrew's actions caused irreversible damage. Unlike Charles, William had no patience for half measures. By 2021, he was already focused on trust, transparency, and survival of the monarchy beyond 2030. The contrast was stark. One generation hesitated. The next stepped away. Public reaction followed. Polls in 2023 showed William as the most trusted royal, with approval ratings above 65%, while Andrew remained below 10%. Viewers didn't need speeches to understand the divide. William represented accountability. Andrew represented entitlement. And Charles stood between them, caught in the middle. This contrast quietly weakened Charles's authority. Every time William appeared decisive, supporting mental health causes, attending public events, speaking plainly, it reminded people of what was missing in the Andrew response. The future king looked ready. The present one looked burdened. And for a monarchy built on continuity, that imbalance was dangerous. Global media turns the heat up. By 2020, the Prince Andrew story stopped being British news and became global disgrace. American outlets like CNN and major newspapers tied Andrew's name directly to Jeffrey Epstein, using court documents dated 2001, 2008, and 2019. The narrative was brutal and simple. If Epstein's crimes were real, and they were, then every powerful man around him deserved scrutiny. Royal titles did not soften that logic. In the United States, commentators focused on accountability. Epstein had been arrested in July 2019. He died in custody on August 10, 2019, at age 66. After that, survivors began speaking more openly. American media questioned why Prince Andrew was never questioned under oath. Legal analysts compared him to businessmen and politicians who lost careers in 2019 to 2021. The implication was clear. Royal status looked like a shield. European media went further. French and German outlets openly questioned the legitimacy of inherited power in 2022 and 2023. Headlines used words like protected, untouchable, and elite immunity. Andrew was no longer treated as an individual embarrassment. He was framed as evidence of a broken system. Each article damaged Britain's moral standing abroad. For King Charles, this was devastating. Every foreign trip carried invisible tension. Every handshake came with unspoken judgment. The Epstein scandal followed him into diplomacy, culture, and soft power. By 2023, the monarchy wasn't just defending itself at home. It was defending itself to the world. As headlines multiplied and patience vanished, the public mood shifted again. This time, people weren't shocked. They were exhausted. And exhaustion turned into something far more dangerous for the monarchy: open disbelief. A monarchy running out of excuses. By 2024, excuses no longer worked. The public had heard them all: legal language, family loyalty. No further comment. Surveys conducted between 2022 and 2024 showed a steady drop in trust, especially among citizens aged 18 to 39. For many, the Epstein scandal wasn't just offensive, it was clarifying. It confirmed suspicions about power without consequence. The palace strategy felt frozen in time. Statements sounded like they belonged to 1995, not the digital era. Meanwhile, social media replayed Andrew's 2019 BBC interview endlessly. Clips circulated on TikTok and X years later, keeping the scandal alive. Each replay reminded audiences that Andrew never showed remorse, only irritation. What made this moment different was accumulation. Andrew followed years of royal controversy, from declining relevance to generational disconnect. Epstein's crimes acted like gasoline. They intensified every criticism already aimed at the monarchy. Privilege, secrecy, protection, all of it collided in one name. By 2023, even moderate royal supporters admitted something felt broken. Questions once whispered became public. Why was Andrew still housed at Royal Lodge? Why did consequences stop short of exile? Why did silence feel like policy? These weren't radical critics anymore. They were ordinary people. As frustration hardened, attention narrowed. Not to Andrew, who had already fallen, but to the man who now carried the crown. Leadership was no longer symbolic. It was being tested daily. The breaking point for the crown. King Charles ascended the throne in September 2022, promising continuity and calm. But calm never came. Andrew's presence at family events in 2023 reignited outrage every time. Funerals, church services, private gatherings, each sighting became a reminder that consequences had limits. Behind palace doors, advisors warned of long-term erosion. Younger generations born after 2000 showed declining emotional attachment to the monarchy. Their loyalty depended on ethics, not history. Andrew's Epstein connection clashed directly with those values. The monarchy's tolerance for error had shrunk to almost nothing. This was the breaking point because it combined every failure at once. A sex trafficking scandal, a protected royal, institutional silence, and historical memory. Comparisons to 1997 resurfaced again, when public anger after Diana's death nearly broke the crown. Then, humility saved it. Now, humility felt absent. By 2024, even neutral commentators used the word fragile. Not collapse, not revolution. Fragile. A monarchy weakened by its own reluctance to act decisively. And fragility, once visible, is hard to hide. As outrage cooled into judgment, only one issue remained unresolved. Not guilt, not innocence, but legacy. And history, unlike the palace, never stays silent. A shame that may define Charles's reign. Every monarch is ultimately judged by crisis, not by speeches, not by intentions, but by the moments when silence becomes a choice. For King Charles III, the exposure of Prince Andrew through the Jeffrey Epstein scandal may become that defining moment. It is the chapter history will return to again and again. The timeline tells a harsh story. The first warning signs appeared in 2001. Epstein's conviction followed in 2008. The scandal exploded publicly in 2019. Andrew lost titles in January 2022. Charles became king in September 2022. That sequence matters. It shows how long the problem was known and how slowly it was addressed. By the time Charles took the throne at 73 years old, the public wasn't asking for explanations. They were asking for closure. But closure never came. Andrew's legal settlement in February 2022 ended a court case, not a moral reckoning. There was no testimony, no cross-examination, no accountability moment. To many people watching from the outside, it felt unfinished. Andrew remained in Royal Lodge. He retained security. He remained present at family events. Each appearance reopened the wound. Each silence deepened resentment. This is where shame enters the record. Not criminal shame, institutional shame, the kind that settles slowly and permanently, the kind that attaches itself not to one man, but to the system around him. King Charles did not create the Epstein scandal, but he inherited the responsibility to end its shadow. History will ask whether he truly did. The public comparison to Diana is unavoidable. In 1997, the monarchy nearly lost public trust because it misread emotion. It survived only after humility and visible change. Andrew's scandal reopened that memory. Once again, the palace appeared distant. Once again, people felt unheard. And once again, silence looked like indifference. What makes this moment dangerous is not outrage. Outrage fades. What remains now is judgment. Quiet, settled judgment. Among younger generations born after 2000, loyalty to the monarchy is conditional. It depends on values, transparency, and accountability. Andrew's continued protection contradicts all three. For them, tradition is not a defense. It is a question. Prince William's clear distance only sharpened that contrast. One future king stepping away from scandal. One current king appearing trapped by it. That imbalance does not need commentary. It speaks for itself. And it places Charles in an uncomfortable position between loyalty to family and duty to institution. Years from now, historians will list dates: 2001, 2008, 2019, 2022. They will study what was known, when it was known, and what followed. They will not ask whether decisions were difficult. They will ask whether they were made. This is the weight of a crown. Some scandals fade with time. Others define eras. This one carries all the markings of the latter, because it is not about rumors or gossip. It is about power, protection, and the limits of accountability. And when history finishes writing this chapter, one truth may remain unavoidable. Shame does not need noise to endure. It only needs silence. The final question is simple and brutal. Will this reign be remembered for reform or for hesitation? History will not care about intentions, only outcomes. And some stains, once visible, never disappear. They become the headline. When history looks back on this chapter, it will not separate Prince Andrew from the institution that surrounded him. It never does. Scandals do not stay neatly contained. They bleed outward, touching everyone who stood close enough, and everyone who chose not to act. For King Charles, that is the uncomfortable truth now written into his reign. Andrew's exposure through the Epstein scandal was not sudden. The warning signs were visible as early as 2001, louder after 2008, and impossible to ignore by 2019. Each year brought another chance to draw a firm line. Each year passed with hesitation instead. By the time Charles became king in September 2022, the public wasn't waiting for explanations anymore. They were waiting for accountability. And accountability never fully came. Yes, Andrew lost titles in January 2022. Yes, he stepped back from public duties, but consequences stopped short. He kept housing. He kept protection. He kept quiet privilege. To many watching from the outside, families struggling through economic pressure in 2022, 2023, and 2024, that distinction mattered. It looked like the system still protected its own. This is where shame enters the story. Not legal shame, moral shame. The kind that doesn't come from courts, but from memory. The kind that follows a monarch longer than any speech or ceremony. King Charles may not have created this crisis, but history rarely rewards inheritance without action. Silence becomes part of the record. Delay becomes a decision. And then there is the echo of the past. The shadow of Diana never truly left the monarchy. Her story taught the public that palaces can be cold, slow, and dangerously detached from human emotion. In 1997, that detachment nearly broke the crown. It survived only because it finally listened. Andrew's scandal reopened that wound. Many felt the same instinct was missing. Again. What makes this moment especially dangerous is not outrage. Outrage fades. What replaces it now is judgment. Quiet, settled judgment. The kind that forms opinions and never revisits them. Among younger generations born after 2000, loyalty is conditional. It depends on values, not tradition. And the Epstein scandal violated those values at their core. Prince William's quiet distance made that contrast impossible to ignore. One future king stepping away from old sins. One current king appearing trapped by them. That imbalance didn't need commentary. The public understood it instinctively. For King Charles, this may be the defining crossroads of his reign. Not because of what Andrew did, but because of what was tolerated afterward. History does not ask whether choices were difficult. It asks whether they were made. The monarchy often speaks about legacy, about continuity, about duty. But legacy is not written by intention. It is written by moments like this, when power is tested, when values are visible, when silence speaks louder than words. Years from now, dates will be listed. 2001, 2008, 2019, 2022. Names will be connected. Patterns will be studied. And one question will remain stubbornly simple. Did the crown protect itself, or did it protect the truth? Some scandals fade. Others define eras. This one may define a reign, because shame, once attached to a crown, does not vanish quietly. It lingers. It reshapes memory. And it waits patiently for history to finish the story.